Liam Drakes, a human engineer, was still adjusting to the feeling of being on the Regulus, a massive military ship traveling through the stars. It had been his dream to serve on a ship like this, but he hadn't expected it to be so crowded. With an ever-growing crew and limited space, the ship was bursting at the seams, and to make matters worse, Liam had been assigned a shared room. He had always been used to working alone in his lab, tinkering with machines, solving problems at his own pace. But this time, things were different. He wasn't alone in the room. He was going to share it with someone very different from him. Vegathar, an alien engineer from the Voltaran species, was as strange to Liam as the stars were to Earth. Tall and slender, with skin that glowed faintly in the dark, Vegathar's people had a culture of precision and logic. They valued order above all else, and their approach to engineering was scientific, calculated, and almost entirely devoid of emotion. When Liam entered the room for the first time, Vegathar was already there, standing rigidly by the small workbench, his glowing skin casting eerie shadows against the walls. The alien didn't even look at Liam as he entered, his focus entirely on a datapad in his hand. Liam tried to make a joke to break the ice, but Vegathar didn't respond. In fact, Vegathar barely acknowledged his presence at all, which made Liam feel uncomfortable. He wasn't used to this kind of coldness. Humans were social, even with strangers, but Vegathar, with his sharp features and distant manner, made it clear that he wasn't interested in small talk. The room itself was cramped, barely enough space for one person, let alone two. There was one narrow bed pushed against the wall, and a small desk cluttered with tools. It wasn't much, but it was all they had for the time being. And with no choice but to share the space, they would have to make it work. Liam dropped his bag on the floor and started unpacking, trying to make himself at home. But he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time he moved, he felt Vegathar's eyes on him. It wasn't hostile, but it was unsettling. Vegathar's intense stare seemed to see straight through him, and it made Liam wonder if the alien saw humans as nothing more than primitive creatures. Trying to ignore the tension, Liam sat down on the bed, flipping through a few schematics for the ship's power systems. He didn't want to make things worse by pushing for a conversation, but he also didn't want to feel completely isolated in a place where he would be spending so much time. He glanced over at Vegathar, who was now deeply immersed in his own work. The alien's calm, controlled demeanor was the complete opposite of Liam's more relaxed, spontaneous nature, and it was clear they weren't going to get along easily. As the silence stretched on, Liam sighed quietly. This was going to be harder than he thought. The first few days on the Regulus were awkward. Liam tried to keep to himself, focusing on the ship's engineering tasks, but he couldn't avoid Vegathar. The alien engineer seemed to be everywhere, his glowing form moving silently through the ship's hallways, always absorbed in his work. At first, their interactions were brief and stiff. Vegathar would nod politely when they crossed paths, but the silence between them was deafening. Liam had never been good at being quiet. He liked to talk, joke around, make people laugh. But with Vegathar, nothing he said seemed to get through. Then, everything changed during a routine power system check. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the ship, followed by a jolt that sent everyone stumbling. The lights flickered, and the ship's computer system started malfunctioning. A deep, worried voice came over the intercom. Critical system failure. Power grid instability detected. Immediate repair required. Liam's heart raced. This wasn't good. Without power, the life support systems could fail. That would mean disaster for everyone on board. Liam grabbed his toolkit and ran toward the engineering room, where Vegathar was already standing by a control panel, looking over the damage. The alien didn't seem worried at all, which only made Liam feel more anxious. Vegathar glanced at Liam, his glowing eyes cold and unreadable. I have already begun the diagnostics. The problem is with the core relay. His voice was smooth and calm, as always, but there was an edge to it now. The situation was more serious than anyone had expected. Liam quickly moved beside him. "All right, what do we need to fix it?" Vegathar pointed to a diagram of the ship's power grid. "The relay is damaged. We must reroute power through an alternate system to prevent a total shutdown." He paused for a moment. "I will need your assistance." Liam blinked. "My assistance? I thought you had it covered." Vegathar gave a small nod. "I can solve this problem with my knowledge of alien technology, but I require someone who can work with human systems. They are not compatible with my methods." Liam frowned, but he didn't argue. This was his job, after all. He was the human engineer, and if Vegathar needed his help, Liam would give it. "Okay, let's do this." Working together, they began the delicate task of rerouting the power. Vegathar's alien technology knowledge was impressive, but it was Liam's hands-on skills with human tech that made the real difference. As they worked side by side, a strange sort of understanding began to form between them. Vegathar had a precise, calm way of thinking, while Liam had a more intuitive approach, figuring things out on the fly. They complemented each other in ways neither had expected. "You work quickly," Vegathar said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Liam smirked. "I guess we humans have a gift for improvising." Vegathar said nothing, but there was something in the way he looked at Liam that made the human feel like they were making real progress, not just in fixing the ship, but in understanding each other. When the power finally came back online, and the ship hummed back to life, Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just the success of the repair, it was the unspoken teamwork between him and Vegathar that made it all possible. For the first time since arriving on the Regulus, Liam felt a spark of respect for the alien engineer. And maybe, just maybe, Vegathar felt the same. Over the next few days, the awkwardness between Liam and Vegathar started to fade. Their work together had broken the ice, and now they were sharing more than just the cramped room and engineering duties. They started talking, really talking, for the first time. It wasn't much at first. In the quiet moments between repairs and system checks, Liam would casually ask Vegathar about his species. "So what's Volteran culture like?" he asked one evening, sitting on the bed as he cleaned his tools. Vegathar didn't respond immediately, as if carefully considering the question. "Volterans value precision, efficiency, and knowledge," he said slowly, his glowing skin pulsing faintly as he spoke. "We believe in using logic to guide every decision. Emotion, for us, is a distraction." Liam tilted his head, curious. "No emotions? That's gotta be tough." Vegathar's glowing eyes seemed to flicker, but his voice remained steady. "It is not a weakness. Emotion is unpredictable. Logic ensures progress." Liam couldn't help but smile. Sounds a little cold, to be honest. For the first time, Vegathar looked at him directly. "It is the way of my people. You humans, however, you seem to embrace emotion. It drives you, makes you unpredictable, but also creative." Liam leaned back on the bed, thinking about what Vegathar had said. "Yeah, we do things with our gut. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's what makes us. Us." Vegathar was quiet for a moment, his fingers tapping lightly on his datapad. "Perhaps there is merit in your unpredictability." "It is intriguing." The conversation didn't go much further that night, but it planted a seed of understanding between them. Liam had always thought of Volterans as distant and cold, but now he was starting to see them as more than just logical machines. There was depth there, even if Vegathar wasn't ready to show it. Days turned into weeks, and their work together grew more seamless. They didn't always agree, of course. Vegathar's need for perfection often clashed with Liam's improvisational style, but they managed to get things done. They began to rely on each other more and more. One afternoon, as they worked on the ship's cooling system, Vegathar handed Liam a strange tool that he'd never seen before. It was sleek, made of smooth alien metal, and it seemed to hum with energy. Try this, Vegathar said, his tone almost encouraging. Liam hesitated but took the tool. What does it do? It will help you adjust the cooling unit faster, Vegathar explained, his eyes narrowing as he watched Liam's reaction. Humans are good at adapting, I have seen, but you must learn to trust new methods. Liam examined the tool, intrigued by the alien design. He had to admit, it looked like it could make his job easier. All right, let's see if I can figure this out. As Liam worked with the tool, he couldn't help but feel a sense of connection with Vegathar. They weren't just sharing a room anymore. They were sharing knowledge, each learning from the other. Later that evening, as they sat in the small room, taking a break from work, Liam decided to share something personal. Back home, he began slowly. I used to work on old cars. My dad and we used to fix them together. It's where I learned most of what I know. He passed away a few years ago, and it's been tough without him. Vegathar didn't say anything for a long time. But then, softly, he spoke. I understand loss, he said. Though my people do not express it the way humans do, we too feel the absence of those we have lost. Liam looked at him, surprised. Vegathar had never spoken of his past before. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, and it made Liam realize that, despite their differences, they weren't so different after all. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the ship's systems filling the space around them. It was a peaceful moment, and for the first time, Liam didn't mind sharing a room with the alien engineer. They were starting to understand each other in a way he never expected. One morning, the calm on the Regulus was shattered by an urgent alarm that echoed through the halls. Liam was in the engine room, working on routine maintenance when the ship's intercom crackled to life. Attention! System breach detected in Section 12. Possible sabotage. All engineers report to duty stations immediately. Liam's heart skipped a beat. Sabotage. That wasn't supposed to happen. The crew had been briefed about the enemy raiders, but this was different. Someone inside the ship had caused this. Liam quickly grabbed his toolkit and ran to the bridge, where Vegathar was already waiting. His glowing form looked even more serious than usual, his normally calm demeanor now replaced with urgency. The damage is significant, Vegathar said, his voice steady but strained. The intruders have gained access to the core systems. We must act fast. Liam nodded, his mind racing. All right, we'll need to lock down all entry points to the core. I'll help with the manual override, but we'll need both of us to fix the wiring. Fast. Vegathar didn't hesitate. We must work together. Trust will be required. Liam raised an eyebrow. Trust. He didn't expect Vegathar to use that word. After all, their partnership had been built on cooperation, not trust. They had worked together before, but this was different. This time, their lives, and the lives of everyone aboard the ship, were at stake. As they hurried to Section 12, they encountered the aftermath of the sabotage. Sparks flew from broken circuits, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt metal. A dangerous silence filled the area, broken only by the crackling of damaged equipment. Liam and Vegathar immediately got to work. They moved quickly, repairing what they could, but the damage was severe. Their eyes met briefly, and Liam could see the uncertainty in Vegathar's glowing eyes. For the first time, the alien engineer seemed unsure. I cannot make the necessary repairs in time, Vegathar admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The system is more complicated than I anticipated. Liam felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had never liked being put in situations where failure was an option. But then he remembered something that had helped him back on Earth, in his days working on cars with his dad. When things went wrong, they didn't panic. They adapted. He took a deep breath and approached the problem in his usual way, by trusting his instincts. Vega, Liam said, his voice calm. I need you to trust me now. We can't stick to the plan. We have to improvise. Vegathar hesitated, improvise. Liam nodded. Yeah, you're great with the alien tech, but we need a human touch. I can see how things can be fixed if we reroute the system manually. Vegathar looked at him, his face unreadable. Then, after a long moment, he nodded. Very well. I will trust your judgment. Liam quickly started rerouting power through a nearby junction box, using a combination of human and alien tools. The task was tricky, and the pressure was mounting, but he knew what needed to be done. Vegathar worked alongside him, carefully adjusting the alien technology to match Liam's modifications. The two engineers worked in silence, their different approaches merging into a single solution. They didn't talk much. There was no time for words. But with each passing minute, the repairs began to take shape. They were close. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the systems flickered back to life. The lights brightened, and the alarms stopped blaring. The sabotage had been stopped. Liam wiped the sweat from his forehead, breathing a sigh of relief. He turned to Vegathar, who stood motionless for a moment, processing what had just happened. You were right, Vegathar said, a rare hint of admiration in his voice. Your method worked. I did not think improvisation could be effective. Liam smiled, though he was still catching his breath. Sometimes, you just have to trust your gut. In that moment, Liam realized something important. He had earned Vegathar's trust. And in return, Vegathar had shown him something valuable. The power of precise, logical thinking. The two engineers had learned from each other, and for the first time, Liam felt like they were truly partners. As the ship returned to normal and the crisis passed, Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The ship was safe, the mission could continue, and somehow, against all odds, he and Vegathar had found common ground. After the sabotage was averted, life on the Regulus seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm. The ship continued its journey through deep space, and the crew went back to their routines. But things were different between Liam and Vegathar. The trust they had built during the crisis had forged a bond that neither of them had expected. Liam found himself looking at Vegathar differently now. The alien engineer was no longer just a quiet, distant figure. There was something more to them. As they worked together, their teamwork had become smoother, almost effortless. Vegathar's calm and logical approach balanced Liam's quick thinking and adaptability. They were a strange pair, but they worked well together. One evening, as the ship's systems were running smoothly, Vegathar turned to Liam with an unusual request. Human, he said, his voice still as cool as ever, but with a hint of something else, something almost curious. You said once that you worked on cars before. I have read some of your memories about Earth. I do not understand the concept of fixing something as simple as a car. Explain it to me. Liam blinked, surprised by the question. Vegathar was rarely interested in things beyond the ship's systems, let alone human hobbies. But this time, there was genuine curiosity in his tone. Liam leaned back in his chair, thinking for a moment before answering. Well, it's pretty simple, Liam said, rubbing his chin. A car is a machine, just like the ship. But instead of fixing it with fancy tools or alien technology, you use what's available. Tools you can hold in your hand, a bit of creativity, and some patience. You take something that's broken, something that isn't working, and you find a way to make it work again. Vegathar was silent for a moment, processing this. And what is the satisfaction in this? He asked. Liam smiled, leaning forward. It's not just about fixing the car. It's about knowing you made something better, something that wasn't working right. You learn more about the machine, and about yourself, as you fix it. Vegathar didn't respond at first, but Liam could see the wheels turning in his mind. It was clear that Vegathar was processing the idea of repair in a new way. He was used to efficiency, to getting things right the first time. But there was a deeper layer to what Liam had just explained. A sense of personal connection to the work, a bond with the machine itself. Days passed, And as Liam worked on the ship's systems, he noticed Vegathar's attitude had changed. The alien engineer was no longer just doing his job. He started to approach the tasks with a more hands-on approach, testing tools, tinkering with things the way Liam did. It was small, but it was a clear sign that Vegathar was starting to understand the concept of working with more than just logic. One evening, as they were working side by side on a maintenance task, Vegathar suddenly handed Liam a small piece of alien equipment. "This is something I have created," Vegathar said. "I believe it will improve your repairs, as you said, using what is available." Liam took the device, examining it carefully. It was sleek, with an elegant design he'd never seen before. "This is amazing," Liam said, impressed. "You made this. How does it work?" Vegathar nodded. "It is designed to be intuitive, a mix of human and Volteran technology. I wanted to see if the concept of improvisation could work for both our peoples." Liam felt a surge of respect for the alien. He had taken what Liam said seriously. And now, they were sharing something more than just repairs. They were sharing knowledge and ideas across species. Vegathar was beginning to see the value in human creativity, and Liam was starting to appreciate the elegance of Vegathar's approach. For the first time, Liam didn't feel like he was just working with an alien. He felt like he was working with a partner, someone who was beginning to understand the true meaning of collaboration. As the night went on, they continued to work together in silence, the bond between them growing stronger with every task they completed. And for the first time, Liam realized that this strange partnership, this forced arrangement, had become something far more valuable than either of them had ever expected. The Regulus had been in deep space for weeks now, and the crew had grown accustomed to their routines. The bond between Liam and Vegathar had strengthened, and their work together had become a seamless partnership. But their growing friendship would soon face its toughest test. One day, while working on the ship's outer hull, a sudden, unexpected alert went off. The ship's eye, Aurora, issued an emergency message. "Warning. Unidentified ship detected. Incoming vessel is hostile. Prepare for attack. Shields at 65%. Liam's heart raced as the message echoed through the ship's corridors. He and Vegathar were in the engine room at the time, working on routine checks. They exchanged quick glances. This was not a drill. "They're coming for us," Liam said, his voice tense. Vegathar's glowing eyes flickered. "We must act fast. They will breach the hull if we do not reinforce the shields immediately." Without wasting any time, they rushed to the command center. The atmosphere in the ship was thick with tension. Crew members scrambled to their stations, but the threat was real. This was not a simple pirate raid. This was a calculated, well-coordinated attack. Liam and Vegathar immediately got to work on reinforcing the ship's defensive systems. The ship's shields were weakening fast, and they needed to increase power to the shield generators to buy enough time for the crew to prepare for the worst. As they worked, Vegathar's calm demeanor remained unchanged. He was methodical and focused, analyzing every system and recalculating as fast as he could. Liam followed his lead, his mind racing to keep up. The two of them worked in sync, their movements quick and efficient. But then the unthinkable happened. A loud explosion shook the ship, and the lights flickered. The alarm blared again, this time with more urgency. "Hull breach detected in Section 5. External force has damaged power grid. Shields failing." Liam's heart sank. The damage was worse than they thought. "Vega, we need to fix this now," Liam shouted, already moving toward the damaged section. But as he turned to leave, he noticed something unsettling. Vegathar wasn't following him. The alien engineer remained at his post, staring at the control panel. "What are you doing?" Liam demanded. "I must remain here," Vegathar said, his voice strangely calm. "I have detected a vulnerability in the core systems. I need to repair it before the enemy can exploit it." Liam's mind raced. He understood what Vegathar was saying. If the enemy got control of the ship's core systems, they could disable everything: life support, weapons, the engines. It would be over for them. But the problem was that the breach in Section 5 was critical. If they didn't repair the shields, the ship would be vulnerable to more attacks. It was a hard decision to make. Vega, you're the only one who can fix the core. But we need to get those shields up first. If we don't stop them now, we'll be sitting ducks, Liam said, his voice filled with urgency. Vegathar looked at him, his glowing eyes flashing with something Liam had never seen before. Hesitation. I will repair the core, Vegathar said firmly. But you must handle the shields. I trust you to fix it. Liam stared at him, heart pounding. This was a test of trust and loyalty. Vegathar was putting his faith in him, and now it was Liam's turn to do the same. I won't let you down, Liam said, determination in his voice. Without another word, they split up, each heading to their respective stations. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The ship shook again from another explosion, but Liam's mind was focused. He raced to Section 5, where sparks flew from the damaged power grid. He was on his own now, but he knew exactly what to do. With steady hands, he began rerouting power, his mind working through the steps as quickly as possible. The time to hesitate was gone. Back in the core, Vegathar worked just as quickly, recalibrating the ship's vital systems. The two engineers were operating on instinct now, trusting each other even though they were far apart. And then, at the exact moment, both systems were repaired. Shields at 100%, core systems stabilized, hull integrity restored. Liam exhaled, his body sagging with relief. They had done it. The Regulus was safe. When the danger had passed, Vegathar found Liam in the hallway, catching his breath. You did it, Vegathar said, his voice soft. We did it. Liam smiled, his chest swelling with pride. Yeah, we did. And for the first time, Liam realized something. This partnership, this bond between them, was stronger than either of them had expected. It wasn't just about fixing the ship anymore. It was about saving each other. The Regulus had passed through its most dangerous moment. The threat of the enemy ship had been neutralized, and the crew was now recovering from the intense attack. The shields were back online, the core was stable, and life aboard the ship was slowly returning to normal. Liam and Vegathar stood side by side in the engine room, looking at the now humming systems of the ship. The tension that had once filled the air was now replaced with a calm, almost peaceful quiet. Liam could feel the weight of what they had just been through. They had saved the ship, sure, but it was more than that. They had saved each other. He could no longer think of Vegathar as just an alien engineer. Vegathar was his partner, someone he had come to rely on in ways he hadn't expected. You know, Liam said, breaking the silence, I didn't think I'd ever be working with an alien like this. Not just working with you, but trusting you. Vegathar turned to him, his glowing eyes focused. I, too, did not expect this. My people do not form partnerships like yours. We rely on logic, on efficiency, not on trust. But you, human, you have shown me the value of working together. Liam smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. It was rare to hear such honesty from Vegathar. Well, I guess we've both learned something. Maybe I've learned a little from you, too, about logic and precision. Vegathar nodded, his expression softening. And I have learned from you, human, the value of flexibility, improvisation. He paused for a moment, and perhaps a little about emotion. Liam chuckled, feeling the familiar tension between them soften even further. Emotion, huh? Yeah, it can get us into trouble sometimes. But I think you've learned there's more to us humans than just feelings. Vegathar's eyes flickered briefly, as though in thought. It is intriguing. I never understood how emotion could lead to effective solutions. But now I see. It can drive creativity. It can drive action. It can save lives. Liam's smile widened. That's the human spirit for you. There was a brief moment of silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence of understanding, of two engineers, one human, one alien, who had learned from each other and become something more than just colleagues. As the hours passed, the ship's systems were once again running smoothly. But the events of the past few days lingered in Liam's mind. He thought back to the moments when he and Vegathar had worked side by side, trusting each other with the fate of the Regulus. He thought about how they had overcome the sabotage, the enemy attack, and their own differences. Now, looking at the sleek, humming engines of the ship, Liam knew one thing for sure. The partnership they had forged wasn't just about fixing the ship. It was about something bigger. It was about two very different beings coming together, learning from one another, and finding strength in each other. As the stars outside the ship glittered in the vastness of space, Liam turned to Vegathar one last time. "You know," he said, "this partnership, it's not just about the ship anymore. It's about us too." Vegathar met his gaze, and for the first time, his glowing eyes seemed to hold something more than just logic. There was understanding. There was respect. "I agree," Vegathar said quietly. "This partnership is something I will not take for granted." Liam extended a hand, and after a brief hesitation, Vegathar shook it. There was no need for words. The gesture said it all. Together, they had survived. Together, they had learned. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.